Black Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to this broadcast of Black Talk Radio News. My name, of course, is Scotty Reed. And today's date is October the 24th, 2024. Anybody play those numbers today? My daughter plays the numbers a lot. She works at a convenience store with her mom. And she plays the number and hits quite a bit, like 500 here, 500 there, 800. And then other people who come to the store get her to pick them numbers for them, and then they give them a cut if they win anything. So I'm like, man, they gonna pull me in. And I was looking at those numbers. But welcome to the broadcast. This is a news and current events program brought to you by the Black Talk Media Project, a North Carolina-based nonprofit. And we primarily serve the Black community, but really I think our mission is the working class community. I live in a rural area and there's a lot of poor people of every color. But in terms of our mission of educating Black people, like Malcolm X said, to teach them how to do things for themselves, like be able to broadcast. We are pioneers in internet radio launching the same year that Facebook launched, 2008. So that's 17 years. It'll be 18 years in November. And we hope people will support us. You can go to blacktalkradionetwork.com. You can also check out some of the other Black Talk Radio family there. We got Time for Awakening. They do a live broadcast every Sunday at 7 o'clock p.m. But then we got other podcasts. We got three girls or three gals, as they call themselves, talking smack and listening to music, coming to you out of Richmond, Virginia. Shout out to Sister Bonita and her friends. And then we got three guys talking smack and listening to music, and they also are based in Richmond, Virginia. And so we got a little bit of something for everybody, and they be playing some great music. I ain't really into some of the jazz, but they be playing all the old school funk, just all the different genres. And they talk about current events. It's a really fun program. And again, you can support all those programs by going to blacktalkradionetwork.com and hit that donate link, and you can do it through PayPal. You could give us stars if you're watching the video on Facebook. And I'm still learning TikTok, and I appreciate the support we have gotten on TikTok. I need to get a regular schedule, but it's election time and things are really busy right now. It's a lot of money to be made out there, just knocking on doors, talking to people. And that's what I've been doing. I'll be going down to the polls after I get this training tomorrow. And then when people come out after voting, we just ask them about their experience. That's easy, $20, right? An hour, right? That's easy. So yeah, that's what I'm into right now. So let's talk about what's in the news. Let me pull up my list of items. Republicans been really turning out hard across the nation. I've been noticing it here in North Carolina, and then when I look at my own county, they have been outpacing the Democrats. Democrats do not seem to be really excited, or they're hesitant, and there are many reasons why that I have talked about in past broadcasts and past videos of supporting someone who is. We cannot argue the fact that the Biden administration is not complicit, and if not, the sole person or entity responsible for what's going on in Gaza. And the whole world sees this. Other nations have moved to put a arms embargo in place. And the signs have been there all year long. And back in January, New York Times, you had people that forgot about that. And I do have a specific focus or tend to focus more on what Black people are doing, but I consume it all to know what everybody's doing. And that includes geopolitics and looking at media base elsewhere. And so anyway, the trends were there. You had all these Black pastors, I can't remember the exact number. People can look up the article. They had signed like an open letter telling the Biden administration, and I'm paraphrasing or summarizing, telling the Biden administration that they will have a hard time going back to their churches, and they represented conservatively, I want to say about 300,000 people who went to these various churches. And they told y'all back in January that they were not going to go stand in their pulpit and tell that their congregants who's supposed to be following Yeshua, even though here in North America, everybody call him Jesus, but his name is Yeshua, and then justify voting for somebody complicit in everything he taught against. That's what those Black pastors told. It might have been 50 Black pastors. And then just here in the past 2 days, and I posted something about it, and somebody questioned the authenticity of was it 25 or 50 Black Muslims? That's how they would describe. That could be Nation of Islam. That could be any other independent Muslim groups. It could be African American Muslims, but they were described as Black Muslims. And 50 of their clerics or whatever the titles, they imams, but they were described as leaders, just told people to vote for a candidate that is not supporting the G thing, the G side that's going on over there, the genocide. Yeah, I don't have to mute myself because this is an adults only stream, so we can use normal words and speak like normal people. I'm not trying to pull any kids into this stream. So, but anyway, so you have people of faith, and let's not forget the Jewish community, especially the Orthodox Jews and the students who were actually called anti-Semites, even though they were Jews, part of these encampments, and still part of them. They're still going on, even if you're not seeing them every day on corporate media. You know, they pretty much have tried to silence them and what have you. So let me see. I got something that just came up. Let me check my computer. Okay, we good. And so we had, what do they call them? The second husband, Vice President Kamala Harris' husband, go around and lie on these students and conflate the word Zionist or Zionism, which is a political ideology that was born in Germany by German white people. In the context of white supremacy, German Jews or Ashkenazi Jews are white, and they function as white all throughout the West. And so, you know, they even discriminate against melanated Jews, like from Ethiopia. And anybody that pays attention to international media, Israel had its own Black Lives Matter movement because of police brutality against the Ethiopians, and then the whole taking in African refugees. They would only let them in if they agreed to get a shot, and it was birth control, trying to sterilize these women. And so they practice racism, white supremacy. That's clear as day. And I'm not like breaking any news. Malcolm X said Zionism is racism. And that's a political ideology that is very similar to the one the Nazi Party came up with in the 1930s. Okay, it's just ironic, right? It's ironic. And then it's also hypocrisy on the part of the Zionists. So that's a political ideology. But we had the vice president's husband using his influence to get college professors fired from their jobs, accusing them of being insensitive to the feelings of their Jewish students. And their Jewish students were out there part of the protest. Of course, they, you know, and other people who grew up in those society within those Jewish communities where they raised their children as Zionists. And then you have the other ones who say Judaism has nothing to do with Zionism. So don't conflate the two. And there's plenty of media out there. They putting up media. The Orthodox Jews I've been seeing following the channel, they come out of New York, Orthodox Jews, and they just telling you what's going on is wrong and what's according to their religion, and telling you don't conflate Judaism with Zionism. It's two different things, because you don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. Joe Biden told you he was a Zionist, right? And so that whole thing is going on. And so how that relates to the news, let me pull up some of the news. What's the first one? Let's go with the Republican turnout, and then we'll talk about how close the race is and the race between Kamala Harris and Donald J. Trump. Man, we scraping the bottom of the barrel on both sides. You know, I think we need to pull from other sources. And I'm going with the Green Party. You got other parties out there, the Libertarians active in North Carolina, where I am. I just can't keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. But I've always been independent in my vote for POTUS. But Kamala Harris could easily, let's say, double her lead. And her lead right now in national polls is only 1.9, something like that. So virtually a tie, because that's going to fall within the margins of error that these polls have. And that's just an average of the national polls coming from 520. But if she just would come out and say that she wants to put an arms embargo on, she could bump up. She could pull a lot of support. People will feel comfortable voting for her, but she's not. She hasn't done it. And it's 2 weeks till election day. And it's people of conscience who will not vote for either Trump or Harris because of the complicity and the promise to continue these international human rights crimes that could easily be stopped if the United States stop arming Israel. It's that simple. That's simple. I don't want to hear nothing that you've been saying for a year about. I've seen more news today about the humanitarian aid hasn't gotten into Gaza and the different parts of northern Palestine, and just starving these people. And we are complicit as a country. And there's other countries that have spoken out and stood up and are introducing arms embargoes. But, you know, I thought this was, well, I never thought that. I'm being facetious. I never thought that this was the land, the home of the free, land of the brave, because we got too many modern day victims of slavery in our prisons. We lead the world. So we'll talk about that poll. And then Texas, we've known Republicans, they've been in the news a lot about censoring of let's just lump it all into non-white history, whether that's Chicano history, whether that's, you know, whatever indigenous First Nation people call themselves. They write their own books and tell their own history of what happened to them when these colonialists came over from Europe and the Holocaust that they went through. So it's some good news coming out of Texas. They tried to ban this book, such a book on indigenous genocide, or the genocide against the indigenous people. And the whole board, they tried to move the book from history and move it to fiction in this public library. And they ended up getting banned. And so I will talk about that story. You know, P. Diddy still in the news. I don't need to tell black folks what's going on with P. Diddy, because it's flooding our timelines and what have you. And it's a very intriguing story with all these victims coming forth. But we have all known that this has gone on in the entertainment industry. Let me get this thought out. I had a thought today. Now, I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm just speculating and just sharing my thoughts. But y'all know that Doug Emhoff, Kamala Harris' husband, is a entertainment lawyer out of Los Angeles. You think he's attended any Hollywood parties or might have witnessed something and said nothing, or, you know, and I'll just stop right there. Okay. I'll just stop right there. But all of Hollywood, we've known this for quite some time. So let's not pretend like this is anything new. But these people, have so much power and money that they can buy politicians, they can buy law enforcement, they can hold off being, you know, prosecuted for their crimes. Witnesses can disappear, what have you. But now, you know, more and more are starting to get prosecuted. And I put it on the civil lawsuits, the stuff that's coming out through civil lawsuits. That's what, with Cassie filing her lawsuit, they gave people courage to come forth and tell their stories and file their own lawsuits. That's what happened with Harvey Weinstein. That's how he got taken down, was through civil lawsuits and evidence being introduced that indicated a crime had been committed. And I think what really got the ball started was whatever state it was or states passed that law that even if the statute of limitations have passed, you still file a civil lawsuit. They gave them a window. And a lot of people came forward, and they still coming forth now. Models are coming forth with Abercrombie Fitch, one of his former CEOs, and we definitely, this is the norm in that world. And we've known it for quite some time, and we continue to consume the media, buy the media that they produce. I mean, why is anybody, now, I was having a conversation with a younger woman in my community who I canvass with sometimes and talk to in a group chat with. And I didn't listen to a lot of Biggie Smalls. I did buy Mace's tape, the one that later became a preacher, and now he got a little podcast. I think their podcast is doing quite well. I don't mean to call it little. But anyway, I didn't listen to Biggie Smalls. Only what came on the radio, and I was clubbing at the time, so the songs that everybody know. All right. But I never purchased it and what have you. I never purchased the tapes. And because if you're going to buy an album or you're going to buy a cassette tape or a CD, you're buying all the songs. You're going to listen to all the songs. And so now that I've been hearing some of the lyrics being made in videos and being written about and listening to them myself, I was like, man, they was telling y'all what they was doing. They was telling you that, I mean, Biggie was rapping about having smacks, right, with other men. This was talked about a friend who was essaying assaulting children and killing them and throwing them over the bridge. This was all put on vinyl, y'all. I didn't hear this stuff. Did y'all? Because I was a Public Enemy man. I was a poor righteous teacher. I didn't never buy their albums, but I was straight up Public Enemy. Bought every cassette. Every cassette. And similar, I didn't even really listen to Tupac, just the stuff that came on the radio or in the club. But I was like really not into that whole gangster rap and talking about harming other black people. That's all that music was about. And because I know the power of media that Malcolm X spoke about, saying it has the power to control the minds of the masses. That's true. Every form of media is a mind control, can be used for mind control. What I'm trying to do is persuade you to a logical point of view, which I like to think I'm logical. I'm not right on everything. And if somebody can present a better argument or counter my point, I have no problem admitting that, hey, I made a mistake. You're right. Okay. I think I had one of those moments with my daughter the other day, but yeah. So we'll get to that story, that Abercrombie, Jeffrey Epstein. We still ain't seen all the people he had on his tape, on those tapes. FBI sees the tapes, but what? You ain't seen no more videos. You ain't seen no more prosecutions. It all ended with him. And Maxwell, I'm surprised that she's still breathing in prison. And so we've known this for a while. That I think this is why Yeshua talked about the love of money is the root of all evil. Money can corrupt you because you can do anything with it that comes into your wicked little heart or enters into your mind. Every little gross thought. You know, these people travel the world abusing people, SAing people, and they have a whole industry. We live in a sick world, y'all. And people are influenced by all this behavior. So then we got, shout out to the people in Cuba. I am so sorry that Joe Biden has caused y'all blackout that y'all have had for 3 days. And I'm sure some people have died who depended on electricity and because they hooked up to medical machines and what have you. And so I don't know what the casualties may be because of this total island blackout. I think it's like an island of 11 million people. It's millions of people. Don't quote me on 11 million, but they had a total power failure and it's linked to Joe Biden's sanctions. Just a few videos ago, if you check my archives, you will see that I was talking to somebody who was bad mouthing Cuba, picking on Castro, and just dropping the history on how long the United States has been punishing the people to get them to do a civil war among themselves and get rid of the social we're not going to call Cuba a democracy. They do have elections, but it's not comparable to us here, the way things are set up here in the United States. But for like local leadership, like what we might call city councils or county boards and what have you, they have all those things, but there's just one political party, right? But you know, those people have the highest literacy rate in the world, free healthcare for all, free, all the things that progressives in this country been begging and fighting with the right wing part of the Democratic Party, the Hillary Clintons, and let's just call them corporate Democrats, the ones that's influenced by big money. They're not progressives, even if they call themselves progressives. All the things Bernie Sanders was fighting for the last 2 times, they beat Bernie down so bad, you know, I don't blame him for not running this time, but I wonder if he would have ran if the Democrats had not suspended democracy by not holding the primary. You know, they just put Kamala in there like that, and she did the worst in the last primaries we had. People have very short memories, and it's showing in the polls. And a lot of it is due to her messaging. It has to do with, the biggest thing is the genocide. Let's not lie to ourselves. Again, hundreds of thousands, if not over 1 million people are conscious. They don't even have to be people of faith. That's a red line. And Jill Stein and Cornel West offers an option to keep our conscience clear. I'm sorry, I wouldn't even take reparations to go, hey, Scotty, we'll pass reparations if you just look the other way on these human rights crimes. Would you take that? Would you take that money or that currency, that check? No, I couldn't, because I am a person of faith, and we're going to give an account one day. Whether it's this life or the next one. I just don't understand how I've seen the perfect meme for it. How watching the genocide for this entire year it's like normalized it. It has normalized it. So let's move on to some of the news. So we got this turnout. Early voting is the Republicans are dominating, it appears. So let me back out of this live right quick, and we'll pull up some audio from you for this report from Breaking Points. And I do recommend Breaking Points as an objective news source. It's about 4 main hosts on there And they'll have some guests or a variety of guests, but it's a really great news source. And you got your progressive on there, you got your moderate, conservative or Republican, but he's an Indian American from India. That's his heritage. His name's Sagar. You got Emily. I think she might be the conservative, and then you got Ryan, who's the progressive. And these are professional journalists, and they also be at the White House asking questions as well. And so I do recommend them as a podcast to follow if you're looking for objective news that isn't favoring one party or the other.
Black Talk Radio.
So let me just pull that up for y'all. Okay, here we go. We'll pull up that video because the Republicans is turning out. And like I told a friend, Donald Trump would have won in 2020 if that ridiculous campaign he ran didn't tell people not to use mail-in ballots, absentee ballots, not to turn out early voting, everybody just bum rush the polls on election day. And it was still very close. But they're not repeating that mistake, even though Trump still be saying suspect stuff in terms of trying to cast doubt on the elections. But Republicans themselves, registered Republicans, have been turning out in huge numbers. And so let's listen to this short report from
that we've been
Crystal.
paying close attention to and reading into it, whatever you can, is the early vote results. And no state have they been more striking than the Sun Belt state of Nevada. Let's put this up on the screen. Nevada also benefits from the fact you got John Ralston, who everyone agrees is like legit in analyzing the early vote. So he updates every day his early voting blog. And at this point, shocking, given previous historical trends, Republicans actually have an advantage in terms of the early vote. So they have successfully convinced their voters to vote early. There's been a huge surge in terms of the rural areas in particular. In fact, he's describing this time, normally he talks about a Clark County, which is Las Vegas, firewall for Democrats. He's talking now about a rural firewall, a massive Republican advantage where there's been extremely high turnout in those rural, heavily conservative areas. In Washington County, which I believe is where Reno is, it's a swing urban county. Republicans have a 4-point lead that's just above their registration average. In Clark County, the firewall is at just 5,000 votes, just 2.5 points in a place where Democrats have a nearly 7% registration edge. So far, and again, it's early days, none of this reads into which way the large number of independents are going to vote. None of this reads into, obviously, what's going to happen on election day. But the early indications for Republicans are quite strong. I think in Nevada, stronger than in any of the other states where we have significant early vote to take a look at. And one of the theories for why Republicans could be outperforming in Nevada in particular comes down to the issue of housing. Let's put this up on the screen. Obviously, this is something we've been focused on for a long time. Just how much of a pain point the unaffordable housing market has become for so many voters. New York Times did a great write-up here. They said, as Harris courts the Sunbelt housing costs stand in her way. And they compare the skyrocketing housing costs, not just to buy a home, but also rents, which is driven and fueled by a number of factors. They compare that to a similar political earthquake as the exodus of steel companies or auto manufacturers that left workers reeling in industrial Midwestern states. So I do think if you see a big divergence between the type of results that come out in the Sunbelt state, Nevada in particular, versus those quote unquote blue wall states in the industrial Midwest, I do think housing is going to be a big part of that story.
I love that story. It's super interesting. A couple of takeaways. Number one is actually inside the story, they court and talk about people who are specifically pissed off in Vegas about California implants. And it made me think about this kind of blue influx theory and whether people are like, oh, these states are all going to turn blue, but they could actually have like an interesting net effect where you have a blue voter come in, but that makes people really hate them and get angry and then vote Republican. And if you think about it, it's actually a real like elite versus non-elite dynamic where you have people who are predominantly at least a lot more rich than the average citizen in Nevada, Texas, wherever, coming in, driving up housing prices. And then those people feel a lot of the displacement, the anger, and they could very much respond in the same way that the blue wall voters did whenever they voted against Democrats on NAFTA, on work, trade policy, immigration, etc. I actually really could see a similar dynamic there. What would probably change things is you still have enough traditional blue voters and others who could offset that. But the tension means that it's a real like class dynamic that comes down to the most fundamental question of housing. I also found the trouble for Harris here was when voters were presented by this New York Times reporter about Harris's housing proposal. There's a deep cynicism where they're like, I don't think any of that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, and look, are they wrong? Especially if there's divided government. I'm going to do a whole monologue about this. You need an act of Congress to have that. What do you think's going to, the U.S. Senate full of Republicans going to pass that? No, it's not going to happen, right? The best you can hope for is some Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, whatever, like loosening of regulations and maybe some stuff through the Housing and Urban Development Agency, but that's about it, right?
Yeah. I mean, listen, if we're
All right, I'm gonna stop it right there. I agree with both of their analysis, but here in North Carolina, Republicans are outpacing. Especially, I've looked at the data here in my county, and they are beating Democrats in turnout. But in my county, which is 1/3 unaffiliated, which I'm unaffiliated, always have been. I think in North Carolina, unaffiliated, you can vote in a Republican primary one year or a Democratic primary the next year. That's how our voting laws are. So why pick one? You know what I'm saying? Why join one? But one of the things I noticed in my rural county in the South is it's a lot of transplants moving here too. Yes, it is, but a lot of them are unaffiliated, and a lot of African Americans where they transplant or are homegrown like myself, are unaffiliated. And so I think my mom's an unaffiliated. I do got an uncle that's a diehard Democrat. But most people I know that do vote, and the majority of the community I live in, I'm not gonna say they don't vote, but I don't be rocking with some of those people down there to know what their politics are. But the unaffiliateds are outpacing the Democrats in my county, and in some cases outpacing the Republicans. So that's some of what they was talking about on a national scale, or what they were seeing in Nevada. I'm saying the same thing here in North Carolina, and particularly in Gaston County. And housing is a big issue. We've been canvassing affordable housing, and they were talking about all that an administration could do is go through the urban housing development or loosen regulations and things like that, which we know Republicans, what was that guy named? Dr. Ben, whatever. Oh man, did that man pass away, the old surgeon? I can't remember his name. Anybody know his name that's in the chat? And greetings if you're just tuning in to Black Talk Radio News. My name again is Scotty Reed. I do a news and current events broadcast. Let me just minimize this screen. So I agree with a lot that has been said, but here is my takeaway from it is these are issues that affect the working class. Sagar did, and he's the moderate, more conservative guy, ran in conservative circles in Washington, D.C. But he's right. It is a class issue. It is a class issue. And the base of the Republican Party are working class people. Okay, some of them benefited, the boomers or whatever, they benefited from white supremacy and got land. They inherited land that was denied to the victims of American slavery, stolen from us. Even after the Civil War, we bought land and it was stolen from us. They used things like eminent domain. That's why reparations is due, but I'm not going, and again, because neither the Democrats or the Republicans support reparations. But these are working class issues. And neither the Republican Party nor the Democratic Party has ever come through substantially for working class people. Like some of the questions I was asking today as I canvassed the people I was able to talk to was, do you think that the general economy, the economy would do better if working class people got their fair share? And I usually ask some variation of that question. I might word it a different way, but that's how it's scripted. So I might say, like, North Carolina's minimum wage, I think y'all is $7.25. And hasn't been raised in decades. And we know the cost of living is way higher than that. So the minimum wage has never kept pace with inflation and things of that nature. And so I said, you know, if we just raised it to $15 an hour, really people need 20, but I'll just say $15 an hour. Do you think that would help the economy as a whole? And every person said yes. Those are progressive policies. And I don't understand why working class people in the Republican Party or the Democrats, and I don't understand why working class people in the Republican Party or the Democratic Party can't see that those who control the top and the policy of those parties really don't give a F about us, other than to suck us into the military. And I did 6 years in the U.S. Army, and I don't say that with any pride, but to suck us working class people and our children into hell. My oldest grandson just turned 14, so 4 years from now, it could be a war still going on that starts today. How long, you know, we was in Iraq 20 something years and still occupying. So that's the only thing we good for is going into the military and then spreading white supremacy, because the only victims of U.S. foreign policy are non-white nations, be they Arab, African, Polynesian, Asian. It don't matter. And that has been its position. And anybody that would come up here, I would challenge you to prove me wrong. We are not going to erase history like we're going to talk about here in this other upcoming. These are undeniable facts. So anybody that tries to deny those facts, you got some stuff going on. You're really a wicked person. You're gonna lie to us and try to gaslight people like that, and then you banning books and what have you. And let's not just put that on the Republicans. I've been listening to Hillary Clinton and what's her name, Kamala Harris, talking about holding social media companies responsible for misinformation, because these are basically their media website. That's why they call it social media, but they're also publishing sites. And because they can't come directly at someone like me, because of me utilizing my free speech and not being afraid to say what I really want to say within reason, obviously. Okay. But they can go after Facebook. They can go after Twitter. Any of these corporations come after Black Talk Radio Network if they don't like what any content that's being put out. Since they can't target the person as an individual, they'll come. That's fascism too, y'all. That's an element of fascism. So let's not talk about Republicans banning books in schools and changing curriculums. Yes, we must talk about it, but let's also talk about the attacks on the First Amendment and citizen journalists like myself by those, I don't even want to say they're on the left, because they ain't. Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris been saying it. The Biden, other members of the Biden administration. Remember, they was talking about that whole, try to set up this whole board of disinformation where you created this office in the executive branch where you're going to contact the heads of these different social media companies if they don't take that article down or delete it or whatever. They made Twitter and them take down that story on Hunter Biden's laptop, calling it Russian disinformation. Everything's disinformation that don't go along with the narrative or whoever's in the executive branch that they don't like. That's an attack on all of us, all of our free speech. So I don't understand why people can't see these are two sides of the same coin, two wings of the same bird, and we have other options. And so that's what I will use my influence to do, is to tell people to join the Green Party. Be you a Republican or Democrat, join a party that doesn't take money from these billionaires and multimillionaires who have corrupted this government, these foreign nations like Israel, and Eric Adams was getting money from Turkey. That's what he's accused of, I should say, been charged with, and will have a trial for. Green Party, I can't speak on the other parties because I haven't really researched them, but the Green Party asks us to donate when we become a member, to pay dues, a yearly due. It could be as little as $5 a year if that's all you got. This is for working class people. You know, I was talking to, this young Black woman in my group chat, and I was talking to her today about everybody on this phone, me, you, and Marcus. This guy, he also in his 30s. I'm the old one. Well, I'm not the oldest, but I'm one of the oldest in the group, the elders. I'm 57. And I was like, everybody on this phone is working class. Everybody on this phone, we're working class. We are not middle class. You got to be making what to be middle class? 150,000 a year, 200,000. I'm not sure. But the majority of the people in this country is working class, and it ain't never worked for us, and the government has never worked for us. So let's try something different, y'all. Can we unite around things like $20 an hour, free health care for all, full funding for our public institutions, free college tuition? Why does it have to be a profit motive in everything? And see, this is the reason why those things that's in Cuba, that's why Joe Biden and every president since what? I guess who was president in 1959? Anybody know? Did John F. Kennedy become president? Who was? I think it was John F. Kennedy. It might have been Eisenhower before him. I'm not sure. But put that embargo on Cuba in 1959. Who did that? And why? You know why? Because they don't want an example of a socialist country that is providing for everyone and trying to be equitable. And so you can't have successful models like that, especially just 90 miles or so off the coast of Florida. You can't have that. So since 1959, this nation of just maybe 11 million people has been surviving. They some survivors. I give it to you. I give it to them. And a lot of them look like me. They're also descendants of victims of slavery. One of the things the revolution overthrew was, even though they didn't have Jim Crow laws down there in Cuba like we had here in the United States, racism was still practiced by them white. I guess we would say they descendants of Spain, since Spain the one that colonized the island and was enslaving Africans on that island. Those are the ones that fled and living in Florida. Okay, and they identify as white. Some of them do, a lot of them do, and a lot of them in Florida are conservative. They vote Republican. But the revolution stopped that discrimination based on race that was already happening, even though it wasn't codified in law. And they actually passed a law outlawing racial discrimination and enforced it. And that offended, of course, the white supremacists in the United States. How dare you not let us practice racism and white supremacy and exploit this island? Those people have been suffering in their power without, but I'm not there at that story. It just angers me. It just really does. So I'm gonna move on, but the polls are pretty much tied. But if we look at, let's say, how Kamala could get a bump, and the only reason I'm really going over this, no, not the only reason, but I do want to cover it because I want it to be, there to be no doubt in anybody's mind that if Kamala Harris loses this election, it ain't black men's fault. It ain't that little tiny percentage of 13% of the population. Hell, we might only be 7%, if that, of the African-American population. Okay? So if a few of us vote for Donald Trump, or vote for Jill Stein, or vote for Cornel West, we ain't the majority. It's still going to be 80+%. And as I broke down on my last broadcast, Jews Kamala might be getting something like 45%. Trump still getting 30-something% among the Jews in Philadelphia and New York. So let's just say they split. I guess some of the other ones is sitting it out, because it don't add up to 100%. So I guess what's left over, they maybe it's not wanting to vote. And maybe they would vote for Democrats, but Democrats won't commit to an arms embargo. So let's move to that story of Kamala could get a 5% jump. A 5% jump. Not that I would believe her or her administration, which is going to be just put people pulled over that haven't resigned from the Biden administration over the genocide. If they're still there, then they're committed to being complicit in it. That's who going to be her staff. Them same old creepy people that do the White House press briefings and lie to our faces and gaslight them. And them reporters is starting to get on them with very tough questions. They really getting tired of it. Okay. But if Kamala Harris would assert her independence from Joe Biden and say that I'm a former prosecutor, I'm a former attorney general, live will end. We have the inactivity. We have detected inactivity during your crime. How do I do this? Okay. It was about to shut me down because it detected inactivity. But anyway, let's get into this story. Let me pull this story up for y'all. This is because she isn't interested in a ceasefire. She can talk all out the side of her mouth that she want to. Talk, what do we call it back in the day, talking out of both sides of your mouth. It might have even been a couple of rap lyrics. I think that was Houdini I'm thinking about. All right, so check out this poll. And I told you about the 300 at the beginning of the broadcast, the 300,000 African-American black churchgoers who they not down. That is the number one issue for them. Is this vile, disgusting human rights crime that we're paying for. Let's see. This is coming to you from truthout.org. Actually, this is a publication, an independent publication that's been around for decades. Probably over 20 years, but I've been following them for a long time. But a poll, when did this poll come out? So this poll came out last month, September the 6th, 2024 was when Jake Johnson wrote this article for Common Dreams. But what I'm looking at is the Truth Out version of it. A majority of Democratic voters say the Gaza crisis is either very or somewhat important in determining how they vote. So it goes on to say survey data published shows that U.S. voter support for Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris would grow if she heeded calls to support an arms embargo against the Israeli military, whose Gaza assault has relied heavily on a steady supply of American weapons. So getting back to her background as a prosecutor, as an attorney general, as a lawyer, and what have you, she knows that they are violating the Leahy laws. I'm not the only one to say this, and journalists aren't the only one to point this out. Senator Bernie Sanders, been pointing it out. I think, I can't remember the guy's name, but a Republican person spoke out in a recent hearing. I just remember a brief news clip I came across. So we know Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman were speaking out against the participation in this grave human rights crime, and they were targeted by AIPAC, which is, let's not pretend like that's not foreign influence in our government. But these neoconservatives and neoliberal Democrats want to point the finger at Russia, Iran, and China, everybody but themselves. And they pay look, y'all, U.S. taxpayers spend billions on propaganda, planting it in other news sources. They got a whole agencies devoted to that. Because Malcolm X said media is the most powerful entity on the planet. It can control the minds of the masses. It can make the innocent look guilty and the guilty look innocent, and that's power. And and that's a universal truth. It's how you use this media. And unfortunately, a lot of working class people just use it for entertainment. And it blows up and they make money off of it. But again, the love of money is the root of all evil. If that's what you got to do well, that's what you got to do. I don't judge anyone. But we could change the world if we mastered, what would we call it? The talk radio genre. Newspapers, writers. That's what we need. We need hosts, people who focus on these important issues, because we cannot rely on what you see on cable, whether it's liberal or conservative. That's billionaires own those corporations and they control the narrative. So it says, commissioned by the Arab American Institute, the online poll of 2,505 American voters conducted between July 31st and August the 1st found that 44% of U.S. voters would back Harris, 40% would support Republican nominee Donald Trump, and 11% would vote third party if the election for president of the United States were held today. But if Harris were to endorse a suspension of U.S. arms shipments and diplomatic support for Israel until there was a ceasefire and withdrawal of forces from Gaza, not just Gaza, but I would demand from all the occupied territory, go back to the international, newly recognized 1967 borders. Her national support, however, would grow from 44% to 49%. That's a 5% bump. But again, look at who she's married to and what he has been doing, and going around using the influence of the second husband to gaslight the world that this anti-genocide, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, and just lying, even influencing our government to pass laws, unconstitutional laws, saying that if you say Zionism, that's anti-Semitism. And then it's written by a nonprofit that gets money from who? This is my beef with Donald Trump. I was thinking about this earlier today. I got many beefs with Donald Trump, but this is for my Republican friends out here. He say America first, but is it America first? Are Americans being put in first? No. Working class people. That Israel, we was talking about Cuba being a socialist country or nation, and that's why Democrats and Republicans have been punishing them. The people. Tens of millions of people, because they chose to elect a government. But Israel has I wouldn't straight up call it a socialist government, but they do have free health care for all. They do have subsidized housing. They're building illegal settlements, hell, in the occupied territory. In Syria, in the Golan Heights, Donald Trump has a settlement named after him in the Golan Heights. That's how BB was kissing Donald Trump's, playing to Donald Trump's narcissism and his ego. Yeah, we'll name this illegal occupied territory we building this illegal settlement on after we then ethnically cleansed this area of Syria. We have a criminal government, and anybody who denies it, and we have lost, I ain't even going to say lost, because we ain't never had any standing in the world to point our fingers at anyone. We haven't been this beacon of freedom and democracy. That's propaganda. They spend millions. So that's a 5% bump that she could get over Trump right now. But she ain't going to do it. Because I'm thinking earlier today, if she actually did that, isn't that kind of acknowledging that you've been complicit into this? Now, of course, you could spin it and say, but I argued behind the scenes and this, that, and the other. But you could announce in your campaign, because of Joe Biden's reluctance to stop the arms embargo, I will implement one day one. The war stops if it ain't coming from the United States. And there's people here disgusting, and sure members of them, people are in Congress. holding these stocks in these defense companies and their families, getting filthy rich off of this. And we're going into debt as working class people. That's what the U.S. debt, we're expected to pay for it. We pay the largest percentage. Why do we keep rocking with these rich people on either side? Rich in their bank account, but poor in character. Selfish. They don't care about us. They just want to exploit us. We got slavery for all today. Go read the 13th Amendment. If not, let's finish it up. This poll came a week after Harris said in her first major television interview since becoming the Democratic presidential nominee that she does not support withholding military support for Israel, even as she acknowledged that far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed in Gaza. So we've seen that clip. I've seen the clip enough. She's complicit. This is a war criminal. This is a war criminal. If there was any justice in the world, Joe Biden and everybody else, Anthony Blinken, everybody who has not resigned in protest of this policy, if there was any justice in this world, then the International Criminal Court would issue a warrant for all of their arrests. It would be like Nuremberg trials of our century. And we just want to act like this ain't happening in front of our face. How do you do it? How do y'all turn off y'all empathy like that? How do you turn your brain off like that to normalize this type of stuff? And it's acceptable to you. I can't join y'all in that. I can't join you. So I'm gonna leave it at that, and I'm gonna move on to the next article. So don't blame black people. Don't blame black men or women in the small, tiny percentage that may have turned up in a poll that said, I'm thinking about voting for Trump. Okay, they ain't enough to swing this election. She could possibly get some of them people to come out that say they not voting to vote for her. But if I had not already voted for Jill Stein, I wouldn't believe her if she said it tomorrow, because she tells lies just like Donald Trump, y'all. We are scraping the bottom of the barrel. This is a historic election. Jeez. Let's pull up, let's change gears and pull up this other story about trying to erase history and gaslighting people. This Texas board, and of course we know in the states, at the state level, it's Republicans. It's not the Democrats at the state level or the county level. It's all Republicans trying to whitewash history. We don't have to invent new terms. That's exactly what it is. Let's pull up that article here. And I pulled it up from the UK source, The Guardian. This is published in the United Kingdom. Some people still call Britain. Texas condemned for placing book on colonization in library's fiction section. An outcry in Montgomery County as Linda Combs' book on European colonization of Native American land reclassified. So this is coming to you again from The Guardian. Richard Luscombe wrote this on October the 21st, so about 3 days ago. Anti-censorship advocates have joined the book publisher Penguin Random House in condemning a Texas county that reclassified an account of European settlers' colonization of indigenous Americans as fiction. The furor in Montgomery County near Houston follows the decision by a citizens review panel at the behest of right-wing activists to place colonization in the Wampanoag story by Linda Combs, it's spelled with 2 O's, Coombs, in the fiction section of children's libraries. The book aims to present young readers with a historic look from the perspective of Native American. It's not, I hate it when they say perspective, but I get it, the context of it. No, it's history or it's not. Ain't no perspective, you know what I'm saying? There is no Israeli perspective. There's no perspective that I would listen to that would entertain any justification for what you're doing to the Palestinian people and Arab people in general, whether they be Muslim, Christian, or Jews. So anyway, getting back to the story, the book aims to present young readers with a historic look from the perspective of Native Americans of the colonization of New England, according to PEN America, the nonprofit advocacy group for free expression in literature. First Amendment issue again that Democrats and Republicans attack, just in different ways. It was published in September of 2023 as one of the 5 titles in Penguin Random House's Race to the Truth series of similarly themed stories intended for middle grades. Other books include Slavery and the African American Story by Patricia Williams Dockery and This Land by Ashley Fairbanks. To claim this book is fiction dismisses our perspective in history, said a statement from Debbie Reese, founder of American Indians in Children's Literature. Books like Colonization and the Wampanoag Story are important to Native kids because they affirm our existence as Native people in the present day. But they're also for non-Native kids because those kids are being shaped by the information in books. This country is better off if we all know history in a more informed way. So let me jump down to what happened, because this went to court and it got challenged in court. That's not the article. That's not the article. A court, and I'm not seeing it right now in this particular article. The court actually banned this censorship of that's what we're going to call it, this so-called citizens review panel. See, something like that happens is when, like, let's use my county, for example, Gaston County. I already broke down that it's pretty much 1/3 Democrats, 1/3 Republicans, 1/3 unaffiliated, but Republicans who have a lot of money behind them. And I would say even better organized. They're very, very people I do not like and don't agree with their racism and the things that they do with their policy, but they are organized and they dominate all the seats. So like the Gaston County Commissioners Board, about 5-6 people, all Republicans. So they could pass a resolution to create a citizens review board that goes into the public libraries that's funded by our taxpayers here in Gaston County and reclassify these books. In this case, try to take a historical, factual book backed up by sources with a publisher behind it, with a bibliography and all of that, and they want to put it in the fiction section. Well, I guess at least they didn't burn it, right? But yeah, it's still, who spends their time doing stuff like this and why? I've heard conservatives talk about they're teaching white children to hate themselves. What? Was those children born back then? Were they born in the 40s, the 30s, the 20s? No, they were not. That's your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents. And maybe you want to whitewash this history or act like it's fiction and it don't exist. It's because maybe you got some heirlooms from the inhumane things that you were doing to African Americans and other non-white people in general. You know, stringing people up, as they say. There's probably so many unsolved murders. They could probably do a television series about Barack Obama and them over there at Netflix. They ain't gonna commission no series like that because he ain't really about that life. And I'm serious about that. So that's a book to look up. I'll leave y'all with one more quote. Books like Colonization and the Wampanoag Story are important to Native kids because they affirm our existence. Y'all already read that. But now we got people in our government and in our country and in our social media circles who want to deny that a G-size happened right in front of our face. The same exact thing of history repeating itself just in a different place and time. Still, white people are involved, colonizing, ethnically cleansing a land. And man, how many times? But I'm gonna go easy on the American people as a whole, because most of the polls show that a majority of Republicans, a majority of Democrats, and a majority of independents want this arms embargo. They want this to stop. But that just should go to show us all, no matter what party we in, that these people don't care nothing about what we want as the taxpayers being asked to foot the bill to all of this. So I think we should clean house. I think all incumbents should be voted out. Well, that's kind of impractical. But it was easy for me to vote a straight Dem ticket in the state of North Carolina because I don't like none of the Republicans. None of them. And then there were no incumbent Democrats that I could vote for. Well, there was one. Jeff Stein running for governor. He's the only one. Yeah. So it was easy, but so you have to really drill down and look at your state politics, who's controlling things behind the scenes, take a peek behind the curtain, what's going on in your county. And most of us, the majority of voters, we don't participate. at that kind of level. We don't go every 2 years to vote in the midterms. We only turn out mainly during these every 4 years. And then it's hyped up. The media does not hype up the midterms. They provide some coverage because they make money off of it, but it isn't hyped up. You don't really see celebrities and stars really coming out, because they got a phone call to try to herd their fans into voting for this person or the other. They don't come out like that during the midterms. And it's not the same amount or level of money that's being spent. So, but the Texas court did suspend that review board. So the censorship board got banned itself. And I'll keep following that story. What's the other story I want to move to? Let me check out the chat. I'm sorry if I've ignored the chat. Thank you, Pax under construction, I imagine. What is that you sent? A rose? Thank you. I think that's a heart. I very much appreciate the support. All the support I get, I pay it forward through our nonprofit to maintaining and promoting independent media. I have a focus on informing Black communities because all we got is rap stations and easy listening R&B and sports stations. We don't really have our own independent Black media anymore, and that's due to laws passed in the 1990s during Bill Clinton's administration. So thank you. Please share the live. Please request to come up. I think I got it set where people can come up. Once I reach a certain amount of subscribers on the TikTok platform, I guess I'll do like subscriber only chats. I'm still just trying to learn it all. It would help me. Like right now I'm using the desktop, but it would help me a lot if I could log in on a different device, which, well, actually I can, but it's not letting me in as a moderator until I get me another moderator, which I just got get my first moderator. So I struggle with that. So let me again look at some of the stuff in the chat and share your opinions there if you're on TikTok. If you're on Black Talk Radio Network or any of the other platforms, you can follow me on TikTok. That's where I really post a lot. I just really kind of unlocked the secrets to try to get around some of the shadow banning I was getting on Facebook, because I tell you, to have 24,000 followers and been on Facebook since it was created in 2008, and we weren't really getting any kind of views, not what you would expect, but now I've learned to unlock some of those secrets, and we've been reaching a lot more people and hitting that at followers. You know what I'm saying? It really does work in producing more reels. That seems to be the secret. My friend Sierra, shout out to Sierra. Thanks for that tip. So yeah, what's the next article we're moving to? Let's move to our Abercrombie, the CEO. Let's throw that up on the screen, because it ain't all just about Diddy. It's many of these people, I'm sure, in that industry. I'm sure it's a lot of people on them Diddy tapes, a lot of powerful people, just like was on them Epstein tapes that we ain't never seen. And you know why we ain't never gonna see them? And you know why they haven't prosecuted anyone else? They done filed it under national security. You can't see your U.S. senator or your U.S. congressman involved in a freak house on Lolita Island or down in Miami with Diddy. You can't. That's national security. And y'all check me. Y'all check the facts. Not that long ago, there was a big trafficking ring, prostitution ring, they called it, in the Maryland area of where we have all the intelligence agencies. I forget the exact name. Is it Falls Church, Virginia? But somewhere in that area where these people working at the Pentagon, it was described as high-level Pentagon officials, U.S. Congress people, who were utilizing this, basically an escort service is the best way I could put it, that was run. The only people that got arrested were these Asian people. It was about 3 or 4 of them alleged to have been running this ring. Again, ain't heard nothing else about it. You know why? They're going to file that under national security. We are not dealing with ethical people. We're not. Donald Trump is not an ethical person. I don't care how many Bibles he sell or sign. He's not an ethical person. Kamala Harris deeds, her works, not her word, just her words, but her words pretty much are telling you that she supports the G-side. She's not going to stop the weapon shipments. These are not ethical people. Why would we vote for unethical people? And I hope that we could have an exodus as working class people and join the Green Party. But let's move on to Abercrombie and Fitch. And again, these are people with the type of money that have been all up in the owner boxes at the RNC, at the DNC. They got the money. They the ones having the fundraisers and the parties and stuff for these 2 major parties in our country. That's gross. That's very gross. So let's pull up on Abercrombie. We're going to listen to this report. Let me freeze my screen for a second, and we're going to listen to this report. And it's not just him. We all should know that, right? So this is coming to you from Live Now from Fox. Let me see. Let me get my speakers back on. Oh, they're on. For some reason I'm not getting no sound right now. Okay, I didn't have it loaded properly. Let's go ahead and listen to this.
Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, 10:15 on the East Coast and 7:15 on the West Coast. Do want to get into some breaking news that we are covering right now as Mike Jeffries, the former CEO of Abercrombie Fitch, arrested on sex trafficking and interstate prostitution charges. That is according to a spokesperson for federal prosecutors. The information coming in just moments ago here. Now, details of the criminal charges not immediately available, but they do come after years of sexual misconduct allegations that were made in civil lawsuits and the media from young people who did claim that Jeffries lured them with promises of modeling work and then pressed them into sexual acts. Jeffries was apparently arrested in West Palm Beach, Florida. That is according to NBC News, CNBC, and other media outlets. 2 others were also arrested. They have been identified as Matthew Smith of West Palm Beach and James Jacobson of Wisconsin in connection with those sex trafficking charges. Again, that is according to news outlets in that area. We know that Jeffries was the CEO of the New Albany, Ohio-based Abercrombie & Fitch from 1992 to 2014. Brooklyn-based U.S. Attorney Breon Pierce and FBI and police officials set to hold a news conference here at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. That is in just about 2 hours to provide more details. Now, a message from the Associated Press seeking comment was left for the attorney representing Jeffries, but information on attorneys for the other defendants not yet available. One civil lawsuit filed in New York last year accused Abercrombie of allowing Jeffries to run a sex trafficking organization during his 22-year tenure. It said that Jeffries had modeling scouts scouring the internet for victims and that some prospective models became sex trafficking victims. The BBC investigation included a dozen men who described being in events that involved sexual acts they said were staged by Jeffries and his partner Smith, often at his home in New York and hotels in London, Paris, and elsewhere. When the civil lawsuit was filed in New York last year, we are told that his attorney declined to comment on the allegations. Again, that is according to the Associated Press. And if you are just joining us, we are following this information here. Mike Jeffries, the former CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch, arrested on sex trafficking and interstate prostitution charges. That is according to a spokesperson for federal prosecutors. Again, a news conference expected to get underway with the Brooklyn-based U.S. Attorney and the FBI at 12 p.m. Eastern Time in just about 2 hours. So we'll make sure to bring you all of those details as we do get them.
And that report came out 2 days ago. 2 days ago. And again, these are the type of people, and I could look it up, but I'll do that later. But somebody can look it up and tell us, I wonder if he's ever held a RNC or a DNC fundraiser or for any candidate. Of course, they would disavow and all that. But y'all know Diddy raised money for the Democrats. They might have funded, the federal government or administration might have funded money. The Obama administration, it would have had to be, or the Biden administration, funded money to them, to his nonprofit Rock the Vote, to get the vote out. Let me bring my screen back up. Yeah. Harvey Weinstein, you know, had these Hollywood parties, and there's pictures of them with Hillary Clinton. What's her name? The black woman from Color Purple, Oprah Winfrey. So let me, these people are wicked, y'all. That's the nation we live in, and there's no denying it. But these people are being exposed because civil lawsuits and victims had the courage to come forward. That's why all this happening. This ain't happening because Diddy tried to sue some liquor company. You know, let's not go there with these wild conspiracy theories. No, none of this came out until Cassie's lawsuit went public, and they settled it real quick, like within 48 hours. Okay. And because it's public record and prosecutors was able to look at it, probably interviewed her about other stuff she's seen to identify other victims. They did the raids, they got the tapes. But Diddy ain't the only one. And the LGBTQA1 community is front and center right now. When we classify this as toxic masculinity among bisexual and gay men, and a lot of this activity, illegal activity, doing stuff to people against their will, preying on young people. Seems to be centered a lot in the entertainment industry, does it not? And then you just think about, we've seen this stuff in the movies. You know, years ago, again, I'm a president of the Black Talk Media Project, and we study the effects on media, and we collaborate with other media organizations, or I follow what they're putting out. And Moms Against Media, something like that, Moms for Responsible Media, it's been 10 years or more. I don't even know if they still active, but they would review like these teen shows that's targeting the teens, like these 70s shows, other popular cable shows. I can't think of any of the names of these shows because I didn't watch them, but they described how they were promoting inappropriate relationships between teachers and students. These actors will be portraying minor students in a high school setting or something like that, and they using alcohol, having sex with each other and adults. And this is entertainment. And so you don't think that people who watch that type of stuff, it doesn't get embedded in their consciousness, and they might want to try to fantasize about it or try to live that out? Don't sleep on the power of media. It could be used for good and it could be used for evil. That's all I'm saying. And I'm trying to use it for good. That is not the last article. The last article that I want to leave you all with, and again, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel, whatever platform you happen to be on. Again, thank you so much for all the support and the love being shown on the TikTok platform. For those listening elsewhere, again, the most secure way is to, our TikTok and our other accounts are tied to the same PayPal account. So yeah, it's secure, but you can always go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, check out some of the other podcasts and hear what's on some Black people's mind, or listen to some good music. Like we do have an internet radio station that's on 24/7. And I do have music playlists up and stuff, and then, you know, just a mixture of the different podcasts. But you can find us on every major podcasting platform, like iHeartRadio, even though I don't like them as a corporation. Amazon Music. You can tell Alexa, hey, Alexa, play Black Talk Radio News with Scotty Reed, or Alexa, play the last podcast from Black Talk Radio Network, and you'll get the main feed with all the podcasts mixed in. But you can go there. There's a donate tab, and it'll link you to a secure page to make a donation directly to the Black Talk Media Project, this North Carolina-based nonprofit of which I'm the president of. The last story I want to get to pertains to this blackout, because I got to quit saying we, because me is not in there. That's W-E. No, I'm me, M-E. And I ain't got nothing to do with this embargo, this cruel, inhumane embargo that has been maintained by every administration since 1959. And then Barack Obama had the nerve to open up his mouth and try to throw some dirt on Fidel Castro's name. The man ain't even alive no more. Embargo's still in place, but try to say that Donald Trump, when he gets on stage at his rallies, rambles like Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro was a very good speaker, and he was an intellectual. And I would say he was more intelligent than Barack Obama. And he's certainly a greater man whose legacy will far outweigh any of the U.S. presidents of doing good in this world and helping African, Latin American countries achieve independence and helping them in their struggle against colonization. Going back to the Texas story, they trying to remove the book or put the book on the indigenous ethnic cleansing that went on and put it in the fiction section. We see down there in Florida, oh, this guy in Florida, Diddy in Florida, Epstein had a house in Florida. Who else in Florida? Trump in Florida. Yeah. Telling y'all it ain't just Diddy. It's a whole bunch of them. And a lot of them we'll never know. We'll probably never see justice. I shouldn't say that, because even my mom tells me about, we have to watch how we use our words, because words can create reality. So we keep saying they'll never be brought to justice, then they won't be. But I wish these people would be brought to justice. They have these titles of former president or senators and congressmen. They're all corrupt, man. They're all corrupt. Not all of them, but let's just say 98% of them are likely corrupt. And we can start over. If you're a Republican and you can't rock with the progressive policies, even though those progressive policies tested well with Republicans when Bernie Sanders was running, and they still test well in surveys and polls, because it's focusing on the working class people. Who gonna turn down that's working class? I don't care if you're making $25 an hour. You're not turning down no free health care. You're not turning down no free child care until your child's old enough to go to school. How much would that lift everybody's boats? So, but if you can't rock with the Green Party, rock with the Libertarians. At least they for smaller government and abolishing the DEA and stop getting and regulating the states when it comes to drugs and stuff, which they use as their number one weapon to target and lock up working class people. To put us in the modern day prison slavery. Again, I told you 13th Amendment created slavery for all. Go read it. Read your state constitution. Hopefully you might be in one of those states where they recently changed the constitution after they got, the activists got hit. Looking for my link about Cuba because I wanted to play that for you, but we are responsible. We are responsible. Here it go. It was hidden. But please listen to this. I'm gonna let it play throughout. I was only gonna play a portion of it, but we are responsible for this. Let me start it from the beginning. Let me back it up. Again, please follow Breaking Points on YouTube. If you're looking for objective media, look, this guy, Ryan Grimm, longtime journalist, he's a progressive. I think the other person he's talking to, Emily, she kind of lean conservative, maybe a little libertarian. Sagar, he seems to be a moderate Republican. He can be reasonable. Other times he can be unreasonable. And then Crystal, she's a progressive. But they're journalists, number one. And they're doing, like, I feel like working towards some Pulitzers, especially what Ryan and them are doing through Drop Site News. And again, this is independent, viewer-funded media. These people used to work in the corporate landscape for the MSNBCs, the Hill, these other places where they are given a script and given parameters. Mehdi Hassan lost his show on MSNBC because he was bringing on people and showing the real side of the genocide. But anyway, listen to this report on Cuba. 10 million, 11 million people in the dark. How many may have been killed intentionally by Joe Biden's harsher, what do they call them, sanctions and what have you. And I just wish the rest of the world will just say, F y'all, we gonna help these people. We gonna trade with these people. They've done so much for the rest of the world. We gonna help them. We don't care. And again, Cuba earlier this week applied to join BRICS. So just hang on, Cuba. Y'all gonna be from under the stranglehold the United States government has on you pretty soon. Just hang in there. Y'all survivors. But let's listen to this from Breaking Points.
Last Friday, the entire island of Cuba was plunged into darkness as a result of a power outage. You can put up E2 on the screen. It was the most significant power outage in the history of Cuba since the revolution. I put up E1 here. This is just an example of an absolutely extraordinary event, which didn't start to kind of unravel itself, to become fixed, to get the lights back on until yesterday. We're going to talk about why this is happening, where this is coming from. But over at Dropsite a couple weeks ago, we published this really fascinating look at Biden's, we'll call it a sanctions regime, but so much of what he's doing, it goes beyond sanctions to Cuba and the way that is impacting the economy there. That piece was written by Ed Augustine, who is a journalist who was based in Havana. But we asked him yesterday to send us a little dispatch about what it has been like over the last 5 days in Havana, where this is coming from. Here's Ed Augustine.
I'm reporting from South Havana, where finally, after 4 days of nationwide rolling power cuts, the lights are finally back on. I was there yesterday afternoon when the lights came back on and people were cheering. And you can well imagine why. It doesn't take much to imagine how difficult life very quickly becomes without electricity. No lights at night, no air conditioning, no fans to keep the mosquitoes and tropical diseases that they carry away, but also problems with the water. Millions of people haven't had running water in Cuba for the last 5 days because the water pumps require electricity. Same story for gas. Cooking gas was losing pressure and was out in parts of Havana. Having said that, the feeling on the ground was a little bit more calm than one might have presumed. If this was to have happened in my own country, the UK, people would have completely lost the plot. And people were stressed here and worried, but not as much as you might think. Cubans are very resilient, or in our way perhaps put up with far too much. But I was interviewing people yesterday, and they said, no, it wasn't a big deal. We're used to power cuts. We've been through this for 60 years. This was the biggest one in Havana that's ever happened. But people kind of shrug, and many people even joke about it. That's a very Cuban thing. Right now, in Havana, over 90% of the city has electricity, but it's a different story for the rest of the country. The national grid is up, it is working, but there are still millions of people in this country, approximately 10 million people, that don't have any electricity right now. The government clearly prioritising political reasons the capital. They don't want any unrest as they would see it. Why is this happening? Two main reasons. First and foremost, US economic warfare. Cuba has been sanctioned for longer than any other country in recorded history. And right now, the US Treasury Department sanctions some oil tankers that had previously docked in Cuba. And so that strongly dissuades other oil tankers from selling oil to Cuba, dealing with Cuba. That drives up costs. So that's just one of hundreds of measures that the US currently has on Cuba, the aim of which is to provoke crises and desperation so people rise up and overthrow government. The other major reason, economic mismanagement, a failed vertically planned economic model. There's complete consensus, or almost complete consensus in Cuba, the current economy is not working, and the Cuban government, despite having their own reform program, have failed to update the system over recent decades. But today, in Havana, a sense of relief. The crisis isn't over. There's still massive problems in terms of being able to afford enough petrol, but relief compared to a couple of days ago.
So he made a couple of interesting points there, and if you go back and read his piece, and we can put up E4 here, this is his piece that he wrote for Dropsite, he talks a lot about the state sponsor of terrorism designation. And so the Obama in 2015 basically normalized relations with Cuba and took them off the state sponsor of terror list. Trump, as a kind of a last act, kind of a little thank you to his friends down in South Florida, put them back on the list. And people expected that Biden would immediately revert to the Obama administration's policy. Say, okay, thanks, Trump, you lost. We're not doing this anymore. We moved beyond this. Instead, the Biden administration came in and ramped things up and made them even tighter. And part of the reason that they were made tighter is that the American sanctions regime in general around the world has gotten broadly tougher. So anybody who's on this state-sponsored terror list now is facing much sharper teeth around the world. And what happens, and the way that the sanctions work now is that it's much more difficult for the media, say, to pin it directly on Biden. In the past, the U.S. would directly sanction X, and the media could say, oh, look, you're sanctioning this, it's causing this harm. Therefore, we can talk about whether or not this is a policy that ought to be in place. By putting them on the state-sponsored terror list, what it does is it makes it basically impossible for them to use the banking system and to do business with anybody else off of the island. And the U.S. would say, well, that's not our problem.
Right.
We don't actually specifically ban this particular provider of grain or oil from providing products to Cuba. We don't bar this particular bank from doing this. But the banks say, because this designation is so opaque and the penalties are so severe, that our lawyers say we should just not do business anywhere near Cuba. Forget it. It might actually be okay, but we're just not going to do it. And as Ed said, they also are specifically sanctioning some particular shipping companies, which is then keeping oil out of Cuba and driving up energy prices.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big picture story is that
the big picture is we live in an evil empire run by evil people who, again, don't want an example of socialism off its shores showing that it's possible to give people free healthcare for all, to give people free higher education. And why would they put them on a state sponsor of terrorism list? For what? I'm going to tell you why. If you're a student of history, especially Black history and international history, particularly with a focus on looking at Africa being colonized since the 1800s, maybe going back before, but definitely during the 1800s by a lot of the European powerhouses of today, the UK, France, certainly the United States, and colonized those countries and kept in place like apartheid, South Africa's white government, colonists, white people who colonized these places, put themselves in power, and everybody else suffers because all the wealth is being directed into the hands of these colonists who don't have any empathy, don't give a damn if these people live or die. And that's how we've been treating the people of Cuba, to force them to overthrow their own government. That might even be against international law. But yet I was about to use a curse word, but yet these hypocrites sit up there and point their fingers at, Russia's sowing disinformation and trying to divide America. How are they going to divide us on racial issues? They accuse them of having this one publishing house, internet digital publishing house, run by some Russian guys with some money from some Russians. Nothing that they link directly to the Russian government, but these Russian people put up some so-called Black Lives Matter memes and talked about police violence. And that is in the Hillary Clinton campaign, said that was propaganda meant to divide the American people. As if people, white, Black, and Asian, and Jewish, Muslims, wasn't out there in them streets protesting police brutality and still out there protesting police brutality. Nothing on the level of what we saw in 2020, but we're out here still fighting. Matter of fact, a lawsuit was just filed in my county against, I think it's the Gastonia City Police Department for racism. And one of the people that's running for Secretary of State, Chad Brown, who is actually over the district I live in for the county commission, he's named in the lawsuit. But yet this the man who told one of my activist friends that institutional racism don't exist. When we were pushing for the removal of that Confederate monument, he was the sole vote against removing it. So I got to look more into that. But what we're doing to Cuba is evil. There's no other way to describe it. There's no justification for it. So in the future, I will try to commit to a schedule after this election season passes, because again, I'm out driving around, knocking on doors, about to take up another job at the polls, asking people about their experience after their vote. So once all of this has cleared up, I will commit to a regular schedule. And I just want to thank everyone who joined us. And I'm trying to still figure this out. I'm gonna just have to go to practice. I don't think TikTok has a practice mode for the desktop studio, but I'll figure it out. But with that said, listen, let's have hope for the future. Let's have hope for our children and our grandchildren. But hope, and this is a play on words, hope without works is dead. That's like, you know, what Jesus said, faith without works is dead. Hope without works is dead. You got to put in the work. We got to put in the work. Starts at the local level first, y'all. But I, again, want to advocate for an exodus from the Republican Party, an exodus from the Democratic Party, and go to the Libertarian or the Green Party. But again, I'm going to tell you Republicans, y'all know y'all like Bernie Sanders' platform. Okay? And that platform lifts all boats. And there's no reason we can't have that. All right. With that said, y'all have a good night. Peace and blessings to all.